Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking with Kristyn, who is the co-founder and chief creative officer at Rescripted. Kristyn is a mom of 3 via IVF. She is a passionate storyteller and unwavering advocate for women's health. She is a writer, reader, podcaster, and creative voice dedicated to reshaping the fertility conversation one honest story at a time. They reach over 74 million with their partners at Rescripted, and it's the leading global media platform for women and their health. Whoever, wherever, and wherever they're at, they believe in self-care that should be self-defined, and the ability to engage in that hinges on quality healthcare and free access to reliable health information. They battle misinformation to close knowledge gaps in the healthcare system by providing women with content, tools, and resources they need to take the leading role in their own self-care from first period to last. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Kristyn from Rescripted. Hey everyone, welcome back to Friends with Fertility. Today we have our special guest from Rescripted, Kristyn. Welcome, Kristyn.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like this is it's like the infertility industry's Super Bowl this week. So thanks for making the time to be here today with us.
Oh, absolutely. Love National Infertility Awareness Week. And like I said before we started recording, like I'm an open book about my journey. So
how did you get into Rescripted, and how did this transform the digital fertility support space that I feel like maybe wasn't there prior to you guys coming into Rescripted?
yeah, so I actually started, I like to say like my portion of Rescripted as a fertility blog in 2018. So it's been, I don't know, my twins are 6.5, so it's been like 7 years, I guess.
Okay.
'Cause I started it when I was pregnant with them after a long infertility journey. And you know, I was 27 when I was on that journey. So I was young. I had been on birth control for a really long time. I came off the pill after I got married, didn't get my period back, got diagnosed with PCOS, and sent straight to a fertility clinic. So I always say, like, my brain couldn't catch up. Like, I was like, wait, what? Why am I here? None of my friends are even trying to conceive, let alone going through fertility treatments. And then even when I was at the fertility clinic, it was like, you're so young, you'll be pregnant in no time. You just need some Clomid and we'll get you ovulating and you'll be in and out. And that's the story. And that was not what happened at all. Had multiple failed IUIs, cystic acne from, coming off of the pill after so long, all the meds involved, ended up like a year later begging to do IVF because I was just like, I want to do what's going to give me the best chances of success. And I got pregnant with twins. My boy girl twins are now 6.5, like I said. And then I just like kind of wanted to pay it forward. Like I felt like my whole identity had shifted throughout that process. And
Right, of course.
I just wanted to talk about what I'd gone through. And my very first post, it was called the Fertility Tribe at the time. But my very first post was like 5 things I wish I knew when I started fertility treatments. And, number 1 was it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like you think, oh, one cycle is 28 days or whatever it is. But when you're going through infertility, it's like tests and blood tests and ultrasounds and doctor's appointments and waiting and waiting and more waiting and hurry up and wait. And so I kind of was talking a lot about that stuff, like all of the stuff that I wish I had known prior. And this was, it was only 6 years ago, but it was like before a lot of people on the internet were talking about this. And kind of struck a chord on Instagram and grew my account that way and my blog readership. And then during COVID, I met my now co-founder, Abby Mercado, and she had started an IVF app for patients to help manage their medications. And she was kind of like having trouble reaching the consumer, and I had this like amazing community, and I was having trouble like basically like I wanted to leave my full-time job and like pursue this and make it a thing. And um so we joined forces and started Rescripted, and now we cover all of women's health. But obviously, we like to say from first period to last period, but obviously still have such a soft spot for Rescripted. And so much of what we cover has a lens of reproductive health. Like the reason we branched out to women's health in the first place was because we had an like aha moment that, you know, the reason so many of us are blindsided by infertility is because we're not taught enough about our bodies in the first place. Like, so everything from like basic menstrual cycle 101 to sexual health to, you know, to how do I know if I have PCOS? Like if I had known some of those things going in, like I didn't even know that I had to ovulate in order to get
I
pregnant.
know, it's insane. It's totally crazy. I always say that my story had started back when my sister was diagnosed with a rare form of cervical cancer and I was 19. I didn't know what a cervix was then. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's simple,
Exactly.
obvious things that we should know. Like you need to ovulate to get pregnant. What does it mean to ovulate or not ovulate? Not just like, oh, you should be
Mhm.
bleeding every 28 days when most of us it's not every 28 days. You know, it's crazy
No.
how now how ridiculous it seems that we don't know and are not taught these obvious things.
And even now, I mean, I've recorded like thousands, like hundreds of episodes of our podcast, from first period to last period, and I've done tons of Instagram lives, and like I always joke that I have like an honorary degree in reproductive health, but like even during my recent pregnancy, I was Googling every 5 seconds.
Of course.
You know, as women, we just have so many questions about our bodies, and often you don't know what you don't know until you're going through
A
it.
hundred
And
percent.
so, and you know, those personal stories really help too.
For sure. It's, I mean, even being on the other side of pregnancy and fertility and everything, I feel like because you guys really do focus on women's health in general, it's such a good resource to be like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or, oh, this is really going on too. And the conversation ignites so that you can then forward that on to other people, whether it's in an actual conversation or sending the emails on to somebody else. It's just
Mhm.
so helpful to, again, spread the awareness on all levels
Yeah.
because this isn't a one-stop shop of infertility or fertility. Like it is all encompassing of women's health in general. And same as you guys, because of my past experience with my sister at such a young age, that's really women's wellness is what was the driving force behind all of
Mhm.
this. And more importantly, why aren't we talking about this? So I'm so
Yeah.
excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. Abby and I both just had our third IVF babies. We like to joke that we have a half a dozen IVF babies between us.
Yes, that's
Um,
amazing.
and we were joking that, you know, now do we have to worry about, like, we're finally on the other side of, and now do we have to worry about perimenopause? Like, you know, like it's like always something when you're a woman.
For sure, for sure. So when you had your last, which was just recently, congratulations again,
Thanks.
did you feel like that yearning inside of you was done?
I just got chills for some reason. I don't know.
Ah,
So he took even longer to conceive than my twins. So my twins was mostly like the longest part of the process was like the diagnosis, figuring out like what worked for my body, you know, troubleshooting with IUIs and Clomid and Letrozole. And then when I did IVF, I had really great success. Like I was 27. I have PCOS, so I have a high AMH and got a decent amount of eggs. And so it was like once we did IVF, it was not like not easy by any means, but you know, we had twins on our second transfer.
okay.
Um, and then this time
Was that
around,
with two embryos or did one?
yeah, so my first transfer failed and I was absolutely devastated.
Of
I
course.
didn't even know at that time that IVF didn't work for some
Okay.
people. Like,
Right,
I
right.
was completely blindsided by that. I remember asking the nurse on the phone, "What do you mean? Like, what do you mean it didn't work?" Like, I was convinced that I was
Right.
pregnant. And so that was probably the lowest point of that journey for me, because it was really eye-opening. It was the first time I thought to myself, like, what if I never become a mom? And that was
Right.
terrifying. But this time around, I had a ton of embryos left from their cycle.
Okay.
And so when it came to having a third, like, I didn't even really worry about it, because I was like, oh, I'll just go back and do a transfer. And then went back, and my clinic no longer took my insurance. So had to switch clinics and move my embryos to a new clinic, which at the time I was like, no big deal. Um, and then never had success. Did I had a chemical pregnancy, two failed transfers, a miscarriage, another failed transfer, and then I finally took a year. I was so devastated at that point that I took a year long break, and my OBGYN was like, "You're going on a hormone holiday. We're not putting anything in your body. We're just, healing and figuring out what the next steps are in 6 months. Like, don't even think about any of
Right.
this for 6 months. That doesn't mean you have to be done. It doesn't mean you have to do IVF again. Like, it just means, like, let's not think about it
Were
for
you
6 months.
okay hearing that? Like, were you like, oh, yeah, you're right.
It
Thank
was, like,
goodness.
really
Or,
freeing at the
okay.
time. It was really, my miscarriage at 6.5 weeks had really sort of messed me up emotionally,
Hmm.
and my body had just been through a lot. And I had two other kids, like, that needed me.
Right.
And so that portion of secondary infertility is so complicated, because it's like I have these two blessings that are healthy and here and need me, and I'm going through this really long, devastating process to, like, hopefully give them the greatest gift of a sibling. But it's, the guilt and, all of the things.
I
So
hear you.
yeah, so I took a pause, and even after 6 months, I was, like, nowhere near ready. Like, my body felt back to normal, my mind felt back normal. I was in therapy, I was in acupuncture, I was working with nutritionists. I was just, like, doing all the holistic things to, like, just get my body back in, working shape. And I really said to myself, like, I think I need to be okay with being done, and, like, come to terms with that before I can really make a decision whether I want to keep going. Because And I did. I got to a point where I was like, I know we'll be okay either way. And then,
How many years had passed till you, like, from when the
um,
twins were born to this, like, okay, I would be
so
okay?
I think I started the process when they were like 2.5, almost 3, and ended up having my baby when they were 6. So yeah, started the process when they were 2.5, almost 3, and had my baby when they were 6. So it was 3 years from start to finish, but it had
Okay.
been like a full year of treatment, then a full year of taking off, and then back to treatment. But I keep saying that I had to come to terms with being
Okay.
done before I could go back and say to myself, like, okay, we'll do this one more time. So we did a fresh retrieval, with the going into it with the thought of, if
Hmm.
it doesn't work for whatever reason, we're done. And having to come to peace to that before we even went into it. Because I said, if I don't come to peace with that, I'm not going to be able to deal with it if it doesn't work. So
And was
am
your
I
husband on the same page with all of that?
Yeah, like, he I think would have been fine being done at that point, because he just hated seeing me go through this. And he we had twins, so, like, he was overwhelmed as it was, and he was like, I would love a third, but, like, this is not happening, and it's taking a toll on us. And so, but ultimately I said, I just want to do one retrieval, fresh batch of eggs, just to say that I did everything I could. And I did a new retrieval after that year-long break, and my first transfer stuck
Yay.
after all of that. And I still don't know if it was the embryos or my body. But I do know that I have an autoimmune condition. I have PCOS, but I also have Hashimoto's. And during that year I took off, I did a ton of holistic stuff to like get my thyroid antibodies down and like just get like calm my nervous system and like do things that
That's
put
awesome.
me in a healthier place. So I think it was a little bit of both, but
Right.
there's obviously no way of knowing. But yeah.
So one thing we both know deeply is that it's not just the physical journey, it's the mental, emotional, spiritual part of that. So what did you do for yourself in that darkest period of that trying to conceive before you got to the point of surrendering to like, okay, maybe this isn't going to happen and I'm okay with that?
I took a lot of breaks this time. Like the difference between like so my first time around, I was full like feet on the gas because I was like, I just want to be a mom. But this time around, I took a lot of breaks in between transfers because I just couldn't, for the sake of my kids and my mental health, like just keep powering through. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so many appointments. You have to figure out childcare. You have to, take care of your kids all day. Like it's just a way different situation and it takes a different kind of toll. So I had to really take a lot of breaks. So all in all, 6 transfers happened over the course of like 2 years.
Do you feel like the industry or the space in general is doing enough to support the mental health from the fertility space, in your opinion?
Rescripted works with a lot of clinic networks, and I think a lot of them are now integrating like, support services, whether it's groups or, on-site therapists. And there's just a lot more therapy offerings, I think, in general out there right now. Like I specifically remember trying to find a therapist postpartum with my twins, and I was like, why is it so hard to find a therapist?
Yeah.
Now it feels like there's, more awareness and stuff like that in general. But yeah, I think like social media continues to be a support system for better or worse. And communities like Rescripted and other communities out there. But it's really hard, and it's hard on marriage, it's hard on like your self-esteem, it's hard on everything. It's really like a whole body disease, which is what infertility is. It's a disease.
I think that's another point that people don't recognize, that they feel like they can power through it, right? And they don't recognize that this is a disease just like anything else would be, and therefore we do need support and help through that, whether it's emotional, physical, etc. And knowing that it may seem like forever when you're in it, but you will get to the other side one way or another, and getting that support through it, whether it's through communities like Rescripted or a coach or therapist that has been through it, it helps tremendously. And actually there's scientific studies that show it helps tremendously. So it's not just us like saying
Oh
anecdotally that
yeah.
it does. So I
That's,
think that getting those messages out too, letting people realize, because I know even for me, when I asked, this was now 7 years ago, is there anyone that I can get help from? The only one at that time was Resolve. And that was group sessions, and they sometimes came to your clinic, but sometimes not. There really wasn't online communities at that time.
mhm.
Um, and I remember thinking my poor phlebotomist wasn't qualified to be watching me cry there, even though I had been a licensed coach for 10 years prior to this, or even more. Like I knew that I wasn't equipped to handle the situation that I was going in, and nor was I able to find anybody who could speak the language that I needed to be having reciprocated to me during that time to make me feel better, whether it's
Mhm.
through the loss or the whole experience in general. So I am
Yep.
so glad that there's so many outlets now that people are recognizing that this is a disease and we need to be talking about it, and you can get help, and it doesn't
Mhm.
have to feel like a mark against you in any way.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
um, let's talk about NIAW, National Infertility Awareness Week, and the current state of fertility advocacy. Um, what I mean, given the change in the landscape in the last 6-7 years since you've been involved in this, what progress do you feel like we've made just as a collective in fertility, and where do you feel like it still needs to go?
I would say we've made progress by just talking about it a lot more. You know, I also think there's a little bit more awareness around like how to talk to people that are going through a difficult time and not asking people like, I mean, there's still a certain generation that does, but like, and not asking people when they're going to have kids. Like, I feel like at least like in my circles, it's like a little bit more known that you don't ask those questions, and because really it's extremely prevalent. And but the more we talk about it, I mean, everyone knows, like a lot of people I know what I do for a living, and like so it's like I have
Mm-hmm.
a poster on my forehead like talk to me about your reproductive trauma, which I love personally, but but like the more people I talk to, and I'm like everyone knows I'm open about it, it's like they tell me their stories about what they've gone through, and almost every mom I know has like dealt with something, whether it's they're on their fertility journey, miscarriages, pregnancy complications, postpartum depression. Like we all have some sort of journey that we've gone through. And, I think just destigmatizing, rescripting the conversation is so important, and advocating for yourself. And because, yeah, we don't know what we don't know. And you deserve to have the care that makes you feel comfortable, and like this is your life, and you're, especially with IVF or fertility, like you're paying for this care most of the time. I mean, definitely there's been strides in the passing bills and insurance coverage and stuff like that, but there's still a long way to go. So,
Right.
um,
If you had a megaphone right now to shout out to the
mhm.
world, what would you say regarding infertility?
uh, um, if I could speak to people who are in the thick of it, I would say I see you. It's a very lonely feeling, but there are so many people out there going through it. And I'm like the last person to tell anyone don't give up. Like that's what this recent journey has taught me, is that like it's okay to give up if like you are at the end of your rope. Like and like that doesn't seem like a hopeful message, but like I got to that point where I was like tapped out, and I had to go on a healing journey to basically accept like the way I thought my family was going to look. That's probably not how it's going to look. Um, and I had to do that in order to kind of get the strength to like muster up one more try. And it worked out. But like, you know, there's just so many messages still, like, don't give up and you'll get your baby. And that's amazing. And like, but I don't know. I do think like you have to take care of your mental health, even if it's just a pause,
Right.
even if it's just doing something to recharge or,
And know that you have the agency to change your mind, right? You might feel
oh my gosh,
today, I want to give up and I'm done over this. But
yes.
then in
I
2 weeks
say
from
that all
now,
the
you might
time.
be like, you know what? I kind of feel like I'm ready again. That's
That's a great
so
point. I say that a
fine.
lot because I did change my mind. Um, I basically was like, no, I don't want to put my body through anything again. And then I went back on that. And then, then if that wouldn't have worked, I would have had to like have another discussion like with myself and my husband and be like, okay, how much more are we willing to do? Like there's different stopping points where you can reevaluate. And some people are called to different paths to parenthoods in the process, and that's amazing too. And but it definitely changes you. Like I definitely think my motherhood journey and who I am as a mother has been greatly influenced by my path to get here. Like I just see things very differently, knowing how like just like knowing how hard it is to make a baby. Like like the fact that like my three are even here is insane to me.
Right. It is. I remember my fertility doctor kind of giving me the statistics and the rundown of, if somebody even were to get pregnant naturally with a process of what has to happen and the percentage of that, it's like, I literally said, like, it's a miracle that people can get pregnant just like in any shape or form, like
And
it's
then I've even
amazing.
been
And then they
thinking,
come out with eyelashes and fingernails and like
it's
all the
crazy.
things.
I've even
It's
been thinking
incredible.
lately about how, like, if I had gotten pregnant with one of those leftover embryos from my previous cycle, like, I wouldn't have the baby I have now. It's just
So
very
beautiful. Yeah.
bizarre to think about, how it all unfolds.
Right. Well, Rescripted is all about, I feel like, giving people the space to feel seen. How have you seen the community change people's experience around fertility?
I think in sharing, personal stories, they've had like that aha moment, like, oh yeah, me too. I didn't know anyone else was going through that. And that's really now across the spectrum of all of women's health, like from, heavy periods and endometriosis to perimenopause. Because it's like a lot of times, you're embarrassed to even talk about any of these issues. And you think no one else is going through it, but really, I was at a conference, just a good example. I was at a conference and like somehow it came up like butt cramps during your period. And someone turned around and was like, wait, I didn't know anyone else experienced that. And so those moments are kind of like what Rescripted is all about. It's, you're not alone. There are other people going through it. Um, and then just we like to say that we don't, I mean, a couple of things. We aren't WebMD where we're like offering really like, you're going to die because you have this, so and so condition, but we're also not like TikTok where, you know, you don't really know your sources and like there's just a lot of like entertainment content. Like we're science-backed content and the voice of your best friend over brunch. So we fall in that sweet spot in the middle where, and we're not telling you what to do. We're telling you, or what you have. We're telling you, okay, you have heavy periods. Like it might be endometriosis. Here's what to ask your doctor.
Right.
So I think that's an important distinction.
Is there a moment when someone in the community has said something that has deeply moved you or surprised you?
Oh yeah, I mean, chills again, but I got a friend request on Instagram recently from someone who was in my fertility tribe support group and then Rescripted support group, infertility support group for years, and she had stopped coming and then I had stopped running it because I was going through my own journey and it was really difficult at the time. And I had to kind of separate work and personal for a little bit. But anyway, I had never seen her kids or anything. And now they're like, she has like two toddlers and she friended me and she said that her and a bunch of the other like women from the group were still really in touch and they send each other pictures of their babies all the
That's
time.
so
And
fun.
I was like, that I could not have gotten a better message. It was,
Yay. That's
yeah.
cool. I
So
feel like anybody who's in this space supporting other women, like getting those pictures, getting the sonograms, getting the heartbeats, all of it is just like Christmas, you opening up something
yeah,
and being so excited because it's such an honor and a gift to be part of somebody's journey to bring these babies into the world. So
yeah,
I couldn't agree with
absolutely.
you more. So let's do a little bit of a lightning round of fun, rapid questions if you're open for that.
Yeah.
Um, so, what's one mantra that you held on to during your treatment?
Um, I was just talking about this actually. Basically that, or just the mindset that it has to be one day at a time. Like, cause I think if you look at the full picture of an IVF cycle, like after a year long break, for example, thinking about doing a whole other retrieval, and then what if a transfer doesn't work, and then what about more testing, and then another transfer, and then pregnancy, and then postpartum, like if you look at that as a whole, that is terrifying.
Right.
But if you kind of say, I just have to get to my next appointment or I just have to do the next right thing, it's a little bit easier to digest.
I couldn't agree more. Coffee or matcha?
Coffee.
What's your go to comfort show or movie during a tough cycle?
Ooh, love The Office, love Seinfeld. If you can tell my sense of humor.
One book or resource that changed the game for you?
I am a big fiction reader, but my favorite memoir of all time is Wild by Cheryl Strayed.
Awesome. What's something you believe about fertility that others might challenge?
I guess I'm not the biggest believer in unexplained infertility. I'm kind of, I've heard someone, maybe it was a fertility doctor I follow, say it's more like unexplored infertility, or like it's on,
I love
like,
that.
it's just undiagnosed.
Right,
Because I personally, as someone with an autoimmune disease, think that in the next like 10 years, there's going to be a lot of research around. I mean, that's the thing about the fertility industry is that it's a young field.
right,
And when you go to ASRM, like you realize that every single day, these, you know, doctors and fellows, and they're doing the research as we speak about things that are affecting us
right,
today. So,
right.
you know, I really believe that the connection between autoimmune and fertility is going to really come to light in the next like decade, because I mean, it makes sense if you have an autoimmune disease and your body is literally creating antibodies and fighting itself. It's kind of like the same concept of like if your body is in fight or flight, it won't ovulate. Like
Right.
if your body's in fight or flight, like it's not going to accept an embryo. Or I mean, don't take that as medical, advice, but it's like I really believe that my body was just not in a good place. Like my thyroid antibodies before I took the break were over 1,000, and when I got pregnant with my son, they were 9.
It's incredible. I'm doing a PhD right now, and it's my dissertation and everything around that is we need to look at the big picture, on the medical side of things, not just seeing a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath in order to say, how do these things come together? Because we cannot anymore have two separate conversations about this when we're
Mhm.
paying an RE to help us through the path, right? I mean, that's really important information to know if you're using embryos time and time and time again
Oh yeah.
to say like, okay, what's going on here, right? So
That's a really, really great point, and something that we really believe at Rescripted is that it can be both and. So like you can work with a nutritionist and go to acupuncture and do holistic things, but you can also still end up doing IVF,
100%.
and that's okay. Like, and then you can also, like I did an epidural and like went to a hospital to give birth, but I still did acupuncture to like help me a lot. Like
Yes.
they're complementary, and a lot of times they're not presented that way.
Right.
And so, kind of doing the research and getting all the information so that you can say, okay, this is the best option for me. That's, I think, the sweet spot for a lot of us.
100%. And knowing that it is okay to kind of bridge that Eastern and Western medicine, it's not
Yes.
so much anymore like it's one or the other, it's both, like you said. And how do you find somebody to support you through that kind of gets that? And I do think that we're coming forward with this new set of ideology with medical doctors that are young and kind of get that perspective of that
Yes,
it
you're
is
right.
both, and there's
You're
this
right.
integration that can be that. But
Mhm.
I think we still have a little ways to go. So
Well, I hit a wall because I was literally being told after five transfers, including 2 losses, like that there's nothing wrong. And at some point you have to not take that for an answer anymore.
absolutely.
You can't just keep throwing it at the wall and seeing if it sticks.
Right. Yeah. And that, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people do take that. But these
Mhm,
types of conversations empower others to recognize that, okay, this isn't right. I need to figure out what questions I need to ask and that I need to move on because it's not
mhm.
okay. It really isn't okay. And there
And
are
going
people
with your
out there.
gut is so important too, because I had a consult with like a world-renowned fertility doctor in New York City, and at the end of the day, I ended up just going back to who got me pregnant with my twins, and like it was like a very heart-led decision,
Good for you.
versus like on paper what it felt like was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think a lot of people lose that intuition when they're in the process because there's so much noise happening. They just want to get pregnant. They don't know which way to go. So the fact that you could kind of center back to that to feel like, oh, this isn't what is right for me is awesome. So good for you. And your little guy is here. So thank you for sharing your heart with us today and your time. And how can people find you and learn more about Rescripted?
Yeah, so you can visit rescripted.com and find us on all social platforms at Hello Rescripted. And our podcast is From First Period to Last Period. We cover all things women's health.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Kristyn, for being here and all that you guys are doing to change the narrative of fertility.
Thank you for having me. Happy NIEW.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.